All right. Good morning and welcome to the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors meeting. Today is Monday, May 24th, 2021 at 9 a.m.
This conference will now be recorded.
First item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Motion by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Okay, this is the next item, discussion and possible action to approve the ordinance 0524-21-01, adopting a utility scale solar energy ordinance on the third and final reading.
So, I have been doing some research over the last week or so, being prompted by some things I've heard and read, and have learned that a large number of the components that are used in the manufacture of solar panels and the equipment that goes with them has a tendency to come from forced labor operations in China, which I don't think anyone is in favor of. And thanks to speaking with Eric and Jim, I've learned that there are some federal safeguards that are in place. And so those safeguards kind of prevent the importation, and certainly electronics from China is one of the things that federal contractors are obligated to take a look at and provide a certification that they're not using anything from forced or child labor. And I would suggest that we put something in this ordinance. Again, it's not something that I want Eric to have to enforce, and it's not even something that is going to come with any penalties. It's simply what I'm proposing is asking that the owner or operator of any of the utility scale solar energy systems simply provide a certification if their operation in this county receives or benefits from any kind of federal, state, local, county funding source. So not even all of them, just if they're taking government money, that they certify that they've made a good faith effort to determine whether any component was created by forced or child labor, and to certify that on the basis of those efforts they're unaware of any such use. So I've put together an amendment. I would not dare to substitute my judgment for Jim's, but I would suggest that it be reviewed by the county attorney, and but I would offer that the principle is something that we could approve on if you guys are willing.
Yeah, I think it's something that obviously, we obviously are concerned about having equipment and material not coming from a source that is forced of that nature. And I think if there's federal guidelines that we could probably duplicate or look at ways that they're already utilizing those systems. You know, I think the challenge was, you know, having a certified document. I think that would be, you know, or a document probably, you know, however federal regulations maybe they requested. I think that would be a guidance that we may want to pursue versus us trying to recreate a document for ourselves, because in our efforts we are just trying to create a opportunity for homeowners or these you know, locations to build.
And it wouldn't put any obligation, as I'm proposing it, on the farmer or the landowner. It would be only on the folks who are, you know, developing and maintaining the system, so the folks who are actually obtaining the components. And really, it boils down to a signed statement by them saying, hey, we don't use parts or products created by forced labor. It's not intended to create any kind of lawsuit. So if we find out someone accidentally did use a product, you know, no one's going to come and sue them or anything. It's more of a statement of principle and policy. So I would, I guess, on that basis, move to amend, and I think I'll share this language. I don't know what the best procedure for doing it. I know this is our final reading, but I've written something up. I would propose that we adopt the amendment in principle, and then either we can have Jim look at it and simply put it in if we agree with it, or maybe we can come back if necessary next week and
What would be the process? Do you have to go back through a reading, Nancy, through the 3 readings? I think so.
With an amendment, we would?
I think anything that's a substantive change,
Really?
that we would need to go back through the process again.
Well, then I don't know how to make this motion, but propose approval of our ordinance to get it in place, and then maybe commence the 3-week process on the amendment.
To amend it after adopted.
And the other thing, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, this would probably not be a substantive change. The other thing I saw was, it looks like there's 2 section 2s. I don't know how to.
That's not a substantive change.
Right,
That's
so I would
something we can
renumber
just
those
fix,
accordingly.
yes.
So I guess I would move the approval of the current reading with that renumbering taken care of, and then as not part of the motion, but ask that we look at this language for the forced labor thing.
I like that path because I think we can discuss the other, because I don't know if there are others. I'm not a big fan of adding things in every resolution where there are federal and state statutes already covering it, because I think it just gets messy. And I don't know if there are federal and state statutes that cover forced labor or child labor internationally. I don't know that. Certainly, and I don't think just even on a utility scale solar project, I would think on anything that the county would be using taxpayer funds for, we would not be interested in purchasing products of that nature.
I would absolutely agree with that.
I don't care if it's a mask or a.
Well, but this would be for people, so the federal regulations relate to federal contractors.
Yep.
And this would relate to, but certainly we could do something for the county not wanting to do that. But this would relate to the solar systems developed privately, but that are, anyone that uses or benefits from any kind of a governmental funding.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that conversation can really flesh it out as we move on.
So Nancy, then do we amend this after we've already gone through our readings?
Right, we're gonna go ahead and adopt this ordinance,
So-
and then we'll bring something back to you we will start the process of adopting a new ordinance that amends this ordinance. And so we'll go
Okay,
through
so
the
we'll
public
just
hearing
continue to
process
read
and
through
the
as what we have now.
Yep.
Yep. Pass what we
So
got.
Nathan made that motion, I'll second to approve as
As
amended
presented.
with this,
The renumber.
renumbering
Okay.
or clarification, whatever may be required there. I don't know if it might be.
I was just wondering, if you think we have an existing commercial wind energy ordinance, I think some of the components in that industry are.
We might wanna take a look at it on a broader scale, yeah.
If it's your desire, they would just come up with a
Yeah.
supplementary use, or an amendment to our supplementary use policies that.
It may be somewhere else and maybe just, yeah,
We'll figure out where
Why
that
we pay
needs
the
to
big
go,
bucks,
yeah.
yep.
okay.
Okay, so, again, this is the utility scale solar energy ordinance on the third and final reading for a roll call vote. And I have a motion.
Pardon me, this is Peter Moritzberg with Orion. Will there be an opportunity for public comment?
On the, what are you referring to, this?
On the thing as,
Not this, yeah, the solar ordinance as drafted, not the issue that was just raised.
Yeah, not on this.
yeah, this is the third
This is the
reading.
third and final reading. The public comments have already been closed.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So again, this is the final reading for, as presented on the ordinance 0524-2101. So if someone could give me a motion.
Nathan,
We
you
did.
motion by
And I'm
Nathan and a
sorry.
second by me there.
Okay, motion by Nathan, seconded by Jeff, roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
I vote aye. Nathan?
Aye.
And Jeff.
Aye.
Okay, this is the final reading. Moving on to the next item. Discussion and possible action to approve resolution 05-24-21-01 and naming depositories with the county treasurer. Amy Zybra.
I move to approve.
Okay,
I will second.
With the
Motion by-
exception that resolution number you tried the O2, because wasn't the last one?
No, that's the other one was an ordinance.
Oh, okay,
This
sorry.
is a resolution.
We like to
Got
make it confusing.
Yeah,
Yeah, those numbers are, okay, so,
we need
Motion.
one more digit.
motion by Nathan,
I like dash R.
seconded by Jeff. You vote, Jeff?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. And Scott?
Aye.
Okay, the resolution passes 5-0, or 4-0, I'm sorry. Okay, the next item is the discussion regarding the impacts of the county, Senate filing 619 with Budget Administrator Sherry Seawright and the Community Services, Felicia Taubert.
You have a sheet in front of you. Santos asked the question about what the financial impact was, and this kind of takes a quick snapshot of that. It shows in fiscal year 2021, which is the budget year starting this coming July, the levy rate reduction will be a 19347 reduction in tax levy rate. In 22-23, our total levy rate for mental health is 61, almost 62 cents, so that will fall off of our levy taxes. As part of this, they're phasing out commercial industrial tax replacement, so that's what you see at the bottom. And these numbers, I didn't take it out because it phases it out, and in year 2030, it will be down to 0. These numbers are if it were 0, assuming we lose all of it. For Muscatine County, we would, if we wanted to backfill in each of the funds, we would have to raise our levy about 21 cents, but we will have a 62-cent reduction. Now, down below, you see the assessor, the schools, the cities, what they're gonna be shorted. We have no control over what they do, if they backfill it or if they don't. So it's not financially devastating for us. I don't know about our mental health system, what that means, but
Well, I think in the mental health system, the analysis I've seen in year one, that the region picks up $1.7 million in additional funding, so it should help us with services there. Now, I was a little confused, in reading Lori put out a little synopsis where this incentive fund and because, we're being capped at 2112, I think it is, this year, 14. And then there's a state payment coming out, but it's not 2114. I don't get that.
Yeah, I was a little confused, and that's why I asked to have this on the agenda, just so we
So
could.
they're gonna fund at 1586 in fiscal year 721.
Oh,
So they're gonna force a cut on us, and they're gonna refund some, but not all of the cut.
right, in 2021, we're gonna fund 2114, they're gonna fund 15.
Oh, okay, that's right, okay,
Yeah,
okay. Those dollars, the 1586 is the incremental dollars from the state.
that's the state share.
Okay,
yes.
got it.
Yes,
So if so the 38 in 23 is an increase over what we were at 30 right now. So the state is in fact adding dollars to the mental health region overall.
that's their plan.
Yeah, that's the current legislation.
we just don't know how they're gonna get to it.
Well, but isn't this also indicative of the fact that past legislatures required us to cut our taxes or gave us basically less valuation to work with, meaning we didn't get as much in taxes, and they promised to make good that difference and now are welching on that promise?
We had that situation with the mental health levy,
Yeah.
there would be tax replacement dollars that lasted for 2 or 3 years, I think, and then.
Certainly is not exclusive to the mental health world, it's all over the place. So it worries me a little bit that we have to trust Des Moines to keep its promises when they said that one legislature was on record in the paper saying, we don't have to keep promises. That disturbed me quite a little bit. But I do think that if this goes off as planned, it's a positive. I just think we need to keep our legislators' feet to the fire with remembering their promises.
Well, I think when you couple it with property tax reduction, which I think it's a good, I'm
Absolutely.
supportive of the move. I think it's a good move. The other thing, there's some other really key language in this that I think will have more far sweeping, impact than just the funding mechanism. There's a couple of things I think of. One, and Felicia would be much better to talk about some of the details of these, but one is it's gonna force all regions to pool funds. So many of the regions, like Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region, as you're aware, the local board or departments spend certain amount of funds, and then in our case, we fund crisis services only through the region and some regional administration dollars. That will no longer happen. All of our dollars, if you see Fund 10, we're gonna send all of that money into the region pool and all the regional play. And while that, you can say that's concerning, I think that puts more eyes on every dollar, would be my comment. There's another really, really critical item in this legislation, and I've been a pretty strong proponent of this. I think we've seen locally, when we brought Felicia on board, the impacts to Muscatine County of performance-based contracting. And that is written into this legislation, that all regions must get there. There's an incentive fund. If you don't get there, you're gonna get penalized financially. So the state has said that this performance-based contracting is a best practice, and all regions will have to do that. That's gonna stir some feathers in our region, because we've had a little bit of those dust-ups in the last few years. We've been making good inroads. Some of our providers have not been terribly excited about it, but it kind of goes into if you provide the service, you get the pay. If you don't provide the service, you don't get the pay. And there's, outcomes and plans for all the services. So it's a little bit more accountable, but I like it from a taxpayer perspective, because you have to provide the services we're paying you to provide. We've had discussions over the years about grant funding and some of those other things, and they're just not possible under performance-based contracting. So I think it'll be interesting. Felicia, maybe you have more comments on that?
I think the challenge for our region in particular is going to be to get all the core services up and running, or have access to, because that's what the legislation says. Right now, we don't have community-based crisis stabilization. We don't have crisis stabilization residential for kids. Community crisis stabilization for adults and kids. We don't have that. And there's really not a good way to do either one of those by saying we can go to it in Iowa City. So we're going to have to implement those things in order to be in compliance with having all the core services, because that's really what a big piece of this legislation is about making sure that every region has all the core and core plus services. And I know the legislators have made comment that it's related to a region not wanting to do a particular service. In our particular case, we couldn't afford it. Because crisis stabilization community is going to be a very hefty price tag. And we're gonna need that 1.7 million to be able to get that up and rolling. Because what that means is if people have, kids have a serious emotional disturbance, that they have access to that. If you remember our family advocacy program that we had here, that's similar to that. So it was about keeping kids out of the hospital and so on and so forth. So that's what I think is gonna be our biggest challenge. I think our other challenge is just the bookkeeping piece of all of this. We're not used to putting all the money in a pool. One of the reasons that I think it's really good for Muscatine is we've saved an awful lot of money. So we're up over 40% in terms of how much we're gonna have left over at the end of the year. So when you pool that amount of money, it brings us down into about that 39% level. Yes, are we putting into the region funding? Absolutely. But I think we need to focus on taking our fair share out in accessing services. Right now, Muscatine County barely accesses mobile crisis. And we're the lowest utilizers of that service in the entire region. And so we're really pushing hard to get police departments and sheriff's departments and any other institutions. Shelter's been stepping up their use of it. We need to use those services so we get the bang for our buck in the first place. So that's been the challenge. And I think, we're gonna do fine financially. We gotta figure out the whole issue of how do we pay for administrative costs and some of those kinds of things, but that'll come back from the region. So there may be an MOU for each one of the counties to pay for, like, our administrative expenses, my salary and Teresa and building and all that kind of stuff. That will very likely be an MOU between the region and the county.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, if you say, you know, where do my concerns lie? One is, I think counties have to be involved locally with the process. And so that, you know, I think there's a bit of a concern in the back of my mind that there may be a push to have all mental health people, employees of the region. And I'm not gonna be supportive of that. I think that it's best when we can look our director in the eyes and know what's going on, and we fight for our constituents, so I'll fight pretty hard for that. So I think that, I remember some conversations with Director Garcia, a year and a half ago, and she, to Felicia's point, a lot of regions were subcontracting and another region, and I remember quite clearly one of the comments she had, she did not feel it was reasonable that a constituent in Iowa would have to drive 100 miles, a family, for services. And so she feels she's pretty adamant that a region needs to have these services available within the regions. Because we see that with transports, and we've seen it over the years in a number of things, that it's difficult for families when you have to move a family member away.
Mm-hmm.
So Felicia, I like the whole, presentation on the performance-based contracts and things like that. What does this do to help us with the children's mental health?
Actually, the additional funding allows us to go ahead and start to put that into place. Before, the region really didn't have a huge amount of money. Take this year as an exception because of COVID and the low utilization. In general, the region did not have the money to put into a children's mental health system, such as mobile crisis community-based services. We didn't have that. And so this additional funding and the continual escalation of the funding will be key to making sure that we have a good children's system. But you gotta remember, the children's system is related to those kids who are diagnosed with a serious emotional disturbance. There's some prevention in there, there's some early intervention in there, but for the most part, it's around those kids who have some pretty serious issues and are in and out of the hospital.
But none of this based contract or funding kind of gives us direction of which way to use it, how to fund those organizations. Nothing that I see here.
Just standards, I think.
We have a list of core and core plus services that we have to have.
Mhm.
So that's going to guide how we go about implementing services within the region. As far as how we contract with our mental health centers and so on and so forth, that's gonna be up to the board to make a decision about. In terms of implementing those performance-based contracts within our region, we'll have a performance-based contract with DHS for sure.
Okay.
And in my estimation, performance-based contracting gets you where you wanna go, whether it's local providers or whether it's with the region or the state. It gets you the data that you need and it gets you where you wanna go, because then you can find out where your holes are.
And in our crisis system, Robert Young Center, if you remember, they have managed our crisis system. And so they have, we had a little blip in the radar here for a year or so, but we're back on track there. And they do performance-based contracting with all the providers in our crisis system. So really what we're doing is transplanting that process to the local providers as well. Which, when Felicia came here, she started working the writing's been on the wall for several years in the mental health systems. And so, I think Felicia has put us in Muscatine County in good shape. And I think in the region, we'll probably have some work to do, and there'll be some, as we saw, Felicia, it hasn't all been roses, and some people have been a little bit hesitant to do that, but we've worked through it.
Is this going to have the way the region's set up now, this is quite a bit of a change, isn't it?
It's a huge amount of
It's a huge change.
Okay.
From a financial standpoint, yes. In terms of, how we spend our money, we've been trucking right along with that. But we didn't have the money to keep going forward, and now we're gonna have the money to keep going forward.
Yeah, our issue was, if you remember, when the last analysis, the last legislation had they not implemented this 619, we would have been in this state where really we can't afford to put in the child services. Now, we had budget surplus, so we could probably do it, but we really didn't dare, because 2 years down the road, we were gonna get penalized and we were gonna lose our ability to tax it, so it wasn't sustainable. And now with this new legislation, with their escalators and some of that, it looks like it could be sustainable. So I suspect that the region will have to do some work on what we're gonna do, but then we're also gonna have to start working on some of those additional services, core services we don't have in all the counties. I think it'll be a good thing. It's never easy, but
Yeah.
it'll be a good thing.
And I think I'll probably try to understand a little more as I read through some of this, but this is all starting July 1st, my understanding.
Yes.
So this is a quick change,
Yes.
pretty quickly
They're
for
giving
you.
us a year to, coagulate all the money into one pool. We don't have to do that right away. We've got about a year to figure out how we're gonna go about that. For purposes of Muscatine, we don't pay a whole lot of bills in a month. Between 5 and 12 for mental health in a month. On the other hand, there are other counties that are paying 50 to 60. So they've gotta figure out on the fiscal agent, because Scott County is the fiscal agent, they've gotta figure out how they're gonna go about that bill paying process. My guess is the board is going to put the burden onto the, management team to come up with some kind of a solution for how, Scott County is able to do all that. I'm certain that Scott County is gonna charge much more of a fee in terms of being the fiscal agent, but, I think that's gonna be the first challenge, is figuring out that whole process of how do we pay bills, because nobody's ever done it before. And centralized billing, for me, that's what we did at DHS. We centralized all the county billing, so that we had one person doing that and we knew where everything was. And it works out pretty slick, because as Jeff said, you're able to look at every dollar that gets spent.
Well, given your experience with your relative large amounts of experience with this, wouldn't it make more sense maybe for us to serve as the fiscal agent? Not to throw a bunch of crap on you, Felicia, but
Felicia, Amy, Sherry, Tavy, all went,
I just want to see how many people I can get to go
Yeah.
all at once.
one of the things I wonder, as I think out through this, is CSN.
Yes.
And what the impact on CSN might be, because quite frankly, CSN has been a pretty heavy lift financially for the region and counties.
Yes.
And I wonder, personally, I think the state should just take something like that over and do. It would make perfect sense that, and I know that's an ISAC program, so there's probably a little bit of political issues there, but it doesn't make sense to me if you go to regionalization and you try to do performance-based contracting, that the state ought to have some type of a system that enables this.
Well, and the CSN is kind of a heavy lift, and we've been working for the last year to get everything up to date for Muscatine County, and we are there. We've taken all people out that don't need to be in it, and we've put people in that do need to be in it that we haven't been able to do before. And so, in terms of who's going to do all that CSN entry, my feeling about that is bills should be reviewed by each of the counties if we're gonna stick with that. Bills should be reviewed by each of the county directors, and CSN should be put in that way, and then those bills go to whoever the fiscal agent is.
And the fiscal agent is just a match and pay, basically.
Yes, that would be it. Because we know our bills better than anybody does. We know if the person, if the billing is correct or not correct, and we know if, we should be paying it. An example is, I'm not gonna pay for a service for the whole month if somebody left on the 10th of the month. They're not gonna bill me the whole month. Well, Scott County's not gonna know that.
Right.
So, and it's gonna, despite Nathan's comment, it's gonna let a lot of pressure off of
Yeah, these other groups.
Amy and Debbie.
So can we look at possibly bringing you back sometime in the next 6 months, maybe? And give us an update on how this is transitioning and how we're seeing the challenges and maybe successes, if you wanna say.
Absolutely, and Nathan, if you wanna talk to Jeff about taking over the fiscal agent side of that, he's your guy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not opposed to it, and I think of that because I think that, you know, I think that we, generally speaking, have a different philosophy maybe than everywhere else. And I think that, you know, I think that there's some merit to that. But I don't know, I also don't know the amount of work. I know that David Farmer does a pretty significant amount of analytical work. And I don't know below David what kind of happens.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what happens at the, you know, I'd have to understand that process a little bit better, but, I certainly have confidence in our staffs and our folks. It's not a confidence issue at all. As a matter of fact, I have the utmost confidence in them, so.
Well, good. Again, it was a big change. I understood it enough to confuse me, I guess, to ask that question to you know, want to see if we can get an update, knowing that it was going to be such an impact for our county. So appreciate that from both of you. Anybody else have anything else? Okay. So another few months, 6 months or whatever, there's a major change, I think we can schedule something for another update for us. Thank you, Felicia and Sherry. The next item is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes on May 17th, 2021 regular meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, seconded by Nathan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Okay, next item is correspondence. Scott?
The only thing I had on correspondence for the COVID updates from Christy Roby Williams, that's the only thing I had that I can think of.
I had a MPW Zoom meeting on the future that they were doing, kind of some of the changes that they were looking at in the long term. I believe that spurred a call. After that, I got a message from the mayor wanting to know if there was a potential to do another meeting with us in possibly late August. Thought it would be good for me to talk to the board, and I shared with her that it would be something that I'd look at and see what the discussion was from here, knowing if it would be value of us looking at that. She had mentioned there was some things that the school board wanted to mention, and wanted to have MPW have a little bit of discussion on what they were doing as well too. So I'm open to cutting some discussion from you guys if there's any desire on that in sometime the last week of August or further out. It's up to you.
I think that makes sense, yeah.
Okay. Communicate that, and then share probably email to Nancy once I know those confirmed times. Probably again, to me, and my favorite is just doing a Zoom for that nature.
You just have so many people, if you tried to get together in one spot, it'd be virtually impossible. You'd probably get better participation via Zoom, would be my guess.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I had gotten also a call from Becky Allgood from Wilton, and just kind of discussing a little bit of their Wilton housing development, their 360, and she wanted to send me some information on what they were doing, kind of give me updates of what they have been doing in regards to housing, knowing that the lumber's so high, but yet still their homes that they're building. And I shared with her that I wanted to get with Jeff and myself and possibly Charlotte and go down there and have a meeting scheduled in the next month or two, giving them an update of what we're doing here in Muscatine, wanting to keep all of the counties and all of the cities in our county inclusive in what we're trying to do and form and trying to help with the foundation and the county level pilot that we're looking at. And then that's all I had for correspondence. Thank you.
See, I had, basically the stuff that we all get, the COVID update. The other thing I had was a, communication from a gentleman, about, it was a follow-up communication we had about possible fencing ideas around, solar installations. So I discussed that with him, I think with each of you individually. That's what I had.
Jeff?
Just some correspondence on housing and pretty much it. Just the other kind of typical emails. Nothing significant to note.
Committee reports?
I had the EMA commission on Thursday, the 20th.
Nathan?
I had Veterans Affairs Commission. The only real thing of note there is we just kind of had a discussion about the change in the commandant at the veterans facility at the state level.
One of the things I forgot to mention about the emergency Brian, we're ESFs, which I don't know what they're protocols for emergency situations basically. So we have 4 or 5 of them that have to be reviewed. So some people may get them, departments, areas, and make sure people read through them, understand their roles and responsibilities. We have to review them and get them back in every year. I think what I could tell you is when I first was appointed by this board to that board, I think there was not a lot of understanding of our roles and responsibilities as it comes to that. I think if you recall when COVID came out, there was kind of some miscommunication and a little bit of, we got through it fine, but I think the learning there was there are agencies and entities within the ESF umbrella that are not necessarily governmental agencies and not necessarily, we don't have a lot of control over, but they are responsible and critical. And I think it's important that we as a group communicate with them in advance so that they know that, you need to review these protocols. You need to have somebody highlighted to them because in the case of an emergency or a deployment, you may be asked to lead these. So that's coming out. Brian's gonna be sending stuff out. I think the commission talked to me, he's gonna send it to different groups and I believe part of it was you were gonna go to some council meetings and, cause some of our smaller municipalities, we get very little, and that was something you saw in COVID, we saw early, was they were complaining weren't getting any information. It's like, well, you have a member on this emergency committee, they're supposed to be there every week. They should be in the loop and in the know, and their role is to go back to the local jurisdiction and communicate that information. So you need to make sure that you have representatives and they know what their roles are.
So does that fall out? So hypothetically, is that commission or that ESF or whatever you called it, is that looking at if another COVID were to hit in another 5 years, how do we react? How do we prevent? Or is that what they do?
No, it's part of the response to any kind of a disaster. So it could be tornado, fire, derecho, it could be COVID, and it's basically, what's the protocol and who's the lead agency
On all those,
and all of that.
those situations.
All those situations. So it's a plan for an emergency situation, and so hopefully it's all an evolving process. So Brian's sending those out, and the commission talked about trying to make sure people really understood their roles. Because I think like the last thing, public health and the hospital, here locally, maybe weren't 100% sure of what their roles in the process
That's
was.
probably a good thing. I mean, communication is obviously going to help. I don't think, there was a lot of, questions around stuff like that. I think that would be good.
Well, I can remember, watching some city council meetings where some of the residents were complaining to council about access to resources and stuff and who, and so there are protocols and there are, that's what this is all about, so that making sure that our elected officials and our agencies understand kind of who's on first. And that's what Brian's sending those out. We've got, I think, 4 to update this year. So there's like 15 of them, right, Brian?
Is there anything?
There's like 15 of these, and the commission decided to do like 4 every cycle.
The state sets up a schedule each year of how many have to be. Basically, I review, either update or send the state, then Iowa Homeland Security will approve that. And then the Emergency Management Commission votes to adopt it.
Is there any part of that that's gonna include like a post-action analysis on the overall response and the individual responses? I mean, cause I know one of the things that concerns me early on, and it's kind of over the year maybe faded a little bit, but Muscatine had an incredibly high death rate per capita at the very beginning of the epidemic. And that was a great concern. Now, I'd love to know, it's certainly evened out since then, which, is I guess good, but, I'd love to know what initially happened, whether that was just something we did that we could have done differently, or something that just kind of was a wacky coincidence. Well, wacky's not the right word, but I'd love to know. I'd love to get a kind of a performance analysis of everything we did, so the next time we can do it better. Hopefully there won't be one, but let's not count on that.
In most disaster situations, there is an after-action report. So that would be something where that would be under public health if they're gonna do that based on that.
I mean, it's one thing to do that, like to react in 48 hours after a tornado or something. It's a little bit bigger undertaking, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good point.
Okay, well, good to know.
Sorry about that.
So, sorry, so I think we're on
That's
Nathan,
really,
on
it's
correspondence. Oh,
No, we're on committees. And
oh,
you-
I'm sorry. My bad. Yeah, you get, it's funny. All right, so I had a We Lead meeting on the 20th, and we had a good discussion on our goals and meetings for housing, and we had a discussion also with Homes for Iowa that was presented, that was mentioned by Charlotte to us in regards to West Liberty having an opportunity to get one of those homes. Now we're just looking for a lot for them. And then we looked at setting up some good goals, and I think in my view, knowing that we'd had that same discussion with Wilson and wanted to bring our group there, I think that would be again another step in that same effort for what they were doing. And this is an ad hoc of that same group, members all of We Lead, but it was a good agenda for what we had. That's all I had for meetings.
On Monday the 17th, I sat in with Randy Spees in the assessor's office to go over the performance review of his department. On Wednesday the 19th, Riverbend Transit. Riverbend Transit is, like so many employers, really struggling for labor. And their operation is obviously somewhat unique in the sense of what it takes to hire qualified personnel. And they're actually going to take and start a 1-year pilot program to hire some full-time people with benefits to try to entice a labor crew. And they're going to initially start this with 10 positions, and they're going to give opportunities, obviously, to their current drivers, which they should, to take on this permanent position. So, but that's a business that is very, very time sensitive, I'll say, and of course it's got a lot of peaks and valleys of peak times and so on. So it's a huge challenge, but they're very proactive on how they're trying to approach this, and I think they're doing. They're really thinking outside the box and on trying to fill those labor needs to support the community and the people that utilize that service. And then on Wednesday the 19th also had a Board of Health meeting and talked about all the pieces of that puzzle but the consensus is throughout that things are going the right direction and so on and so forth. And we've obviously, met, virtually, and, they're gonna go back to, every other month meetings. And the July meeting, we will actually meet in person, which tells me that, they're optimistic, which is good. And that's all I have.
Scott, one of the things the director of public health had been talking a lot about is health equity. And I guess I'd be interested in seeing what her assessment of our accomplishments, what the goals were and what our accomplishments toward those goals were in the response to COVID in terms of health equity. Is that something that she's talked about? Because I don't honestly know what it means. And when we talk about something that much, I'd love for someone to tell me what it means.
I will pose that question.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay. Moving on to the next items is items of the administration office, and the first item is discussion and possible action to appoint Rosie Eichelberger in the Muscatine County Civil Service Commission, term ending June 30th, 2026.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jeff. Seconded. Sorry, motion by Nathan, seconded by.
Sorry, you're
Jeff.
not hurting my feelings.
Any discussion?
No, Rosie's she's been on it before. She's very good. We appreciate her willingness to do it.
I'm gonna thank Rosie for stepping up and being willing to do this.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you again, Rosie. Okay, the next item is discussion and possible action authorizing the chair to execute the following: July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, an agreement regarding the Muscatine County Engineers Office Secondary Roads Unit between Muscatine County and chauffeurs, teamsters, and helpers of the local union 238. Do we need to vote on each one, or can we do them all?
I'd like you to vote on each one.
Okay.
So I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Jeff, second by Scott on the local union 238. Okay, this is just it's not a roll call vote, so all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, any discussion? I forgot to ask that. Good, all right. Sorry to cut you guys off on that one. So the next one is July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. An agreement regarding the Muscatine County Sheriff's Office Corrections Office Unit between Muscatine County and chauffeurs, teamsters, and helpers local union number 23. Is that the same thing?
No, one of them's the engineer. We have 3 Teamsters contracts.
Oh, I'm
The
sorry.
first one was
Okay.
the engineer, this is corrections.
My bad, I'm sorry. Okay, so motion by Jeff.
Second.
Seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 4-0. Item number 3. Memorandum of Understanding with chauffeurs, teamsters, and helpers local unit number 238 regarding direct deposit.
Right, we switched to, a while back, the board changed their policy that we require direct deposit, for all new people. However, the union contract still say that it's at the employee's option. We didn't catch that in this particular contract until we already had a tentative agreement. We didn't want to have to go back to the table on that, so we just proposed an MOU, which they agreed to. So that basically makes, direct deposit mandatory for that, we have that countywide now.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Scott, seconded by Jeff. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Okay, item number 4, July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. Agreement regarding the Muscatine County Sheriff's Office Deputies Sheriff's Unit between Muscatine County and chauffeur, teamsters, and helpers local unit number 238.
Move to approve.
Motion by Jeff, seconded by Nathan. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item number 5, revised class specification for administrative assistant and jail receptionist positions covered under the AFSCME bargaining agreement.
This is the ASME unit as part of that process, and I talked to you guys about this early on. We had 2 positions that had changed pretty drastically from what they looked like the last time we negotiated a contract with these folks. So we went through, revised those job descriptions and to get some idea about what was an appropriate wage for them. They were analyzed the same way I analyze positions within our salary administration program, to kind of come up with what that salary range should be. And so this action by you approves those revised class specs and changes the grades for those 2 positions. The step system for those 2 positions within the contract was adjusted to reflect the more appropriate salary.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Jeff, seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye, opposed? Okay, 4-0. The next item is July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. Agreement regarding Muscatine County Sheriff's Office Jail Support Unit between Muscatine County and American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, ASME, Iowa Council. I didn't know how to pronounce that before. Thank you. Okay,
Move to approve.
motion by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. And thank you so much, Nancy, and on the follow-up for that, and yeah, on being able to get those all the way through.
I think we need to give Jim and
Yes.
Quinn and
Jim.
Keith and Matt McCleary some kudos as well. They were all
Yes.
involved in the
I know you
process.
guys, that was a lot of work, and so I do really appreciate all that work and getting those negotiated for us. Okay, the next item is discussion and possible action to approve the FY 21-22 salary schedule 2% adjustment to the scale to authorize the one-time payments to employees to maximum step up their grade to grade 1%.
So this is for the group of our employees who fall under our salary administration program. This adjusts it sets their wages for next fiscal year.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, seconded by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 4-0. Okay, the next item is action to set the county engineer's FY 21-22 salary.
Do you want to talk about that one?
We met with Keith on that, and we negotiated that out and set that at 3%.
Any questions, concerns? And Keith does a great job and
Very thorough,
very thorough.
passionate.
Yep. Yeah.
You can be.
That's a
All
fair
right.
statement.
Okay.
Move
so-
to approve.
Okay, a motion by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by, I think I got Nathan on that one. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 4-0 on that. Okay, action to accept claims made, 2021 payroll claims.
Move to approve.
Motion by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Scott. Any other items, Nancy?
The only other thing I have is just a reminder that my last day in the office will be Friday, and then I will be gone until June 14th.
I would say two things at this point. I know we've got another agenda item. Number one, next week, I believe, will be our final call-in meeting, so we'll be resuming.
Actually, we won't have a meeting next week.
That's right, we
So
won't.
this is your final call-in meeting.
Well, that's right, very good. See, that's awesome. The other thing is, just want to extend condolences to our brother Doug Holliday, who lost his father. Just our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family.
Yes, yes. Okay, hearing nothing on, we'll move on to item number 10, receive information from county employees.
Just this morning I did drop off, last week, I did about just a map that showed the floodplain of the Washington Street property, so that's what those two things are. There's nothing on the agenda for action or anything, but something to inquire about. So that actually shows floodway, the entire parcel that we own is in the floodway, which just has a little tighter restrictions on development than the general 100-year floodplain. Base flood elevation, I think, is shown right at 558 feet, which is pretty close to what the natural grade is. It's a pretty flat spot there for the majority of the property, so any development wouldn't have to be raised real high down the road, but it's pretty shallow flooding area, but it is in the floodway.
So is 558 what is the 100-year flood for that area?
So that's what that means. The base flood elevation means the 100-year flood level.
Okay, so
So
558.
558 is the base flood elevation, and when I say that's approximate grade, that's just using existing topographical data, that's not a survey.
That's not somebody coming out there with a GPS or anything.
So it gives you kind of an idea that the whole property's in the floodplain. The buildings are more or less completely cleaned out. Sheriff may have a few items, but he tries, within a week, if any, a week's notice, I think we should be out there by the end of the day. So,
Okay.
same thing, Oscar may have just a few items, but it wouldn't be anything to take any time if there was any. We had a pre-construction meeting for the jail project late last week. It's gonna be a tight laydown area, for materials and equipment, drop trailers. There are some concerns on staging of materials, whether we had enough room. There's some questions about whether Washington Street could be used temporarily, to store some equipment if it wasn't being used, for a week or whatever. Not sure yet if that's gonna be necessary, but we do have that space available at this time, so just something to keep in mind if you had any disposition ideas. But I think we've got some time, we gotta go through a hearing, right?
Potentially, Quinn, do you want to talk to them at this point?
We probably should go up there, if is that okay? Or I'm not trying to point you out, I know Kirk has been doing it, but I think it's. Oh, Tony, your foot fell asleep.
Don't get that on camera.
Yeah.
Pretty sad, Quinn.
Looking over here, hopefully.
Yeah, it was pretty sad.
Just for the run yesterday, I did 5 miles yesterday, and I'm kinda a little sore yet, so.
I drove at least twice that far, I don't hear it.
And you walked right in with no issues?
That's right.
I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So, there's been some discussion, between the city and the county, the police department, sheriff's office, really over the last couple of years, about joining forces as far as a range/training facility would go. In years past, and it's talk, there's been nothing.
His eyes lit up over here.
Nothing set in stone, obviously, because this is the first you guys are hearing about it.
Yeah, we didn't hear about it.
So, historically, the sheriff's office has always relied on the use of private ranges for our qualifying and training. That became an issue within the last year, where the owner of one of those facilities had passed. There was some family dynamic changes where we're not utilizing that range anymore. We are now utilizing a range down in Wise County, which, being a private range, there's always that possibility that could change, whether we're still welcome there or not. I would propose just to think about if there would be any interest in using that Washington Street property as a buy-in or a bargaining chip to develop something like that.
You're not suggesting using that property as a.
No, absolutely, absolutely not.
That would be.
So, the city has the facility out behind MPW, correct?
They're not able to use that anymore either. So right now, they're using the same range that we're using down in Wise County.
Floods.
Yeah. So we're both kind of in the same boat, so to speak.
Why?
So
I guess.
It's an issue that comes around, every so often that we're uncertain on where we're gonna end up as far as our range qualifications, different trainings and things like that.
Well, I can tell you, I personally find it unacceptable that we don't have a facility for our officers to certify and
Yeah,
train. That's just not acceptable, and we need to control ours. You know, we had there was the conservation group had a proposal a couple of years ago that couldn't get through the zoning process, but I absolutely agree with that, and I think that's something we should have some substantive discussions about where and how we should do something like that.
And
It's not a matter of if to me.
with with that property becoming available, like I said, we'll have all of our stuff moved out of there yet today. We've got some small evidentiary things down there that are being moved out to Park Avenue West by the end of today. The search and rescue is moved out. As Eric stated, the maintenance guys have some things down there yet. We have some things in the other building that are on gov deals, which that auction will expire, I think, sometime in the next week. So rather than move that stuff twice, we're leaving it there until that auction expires, but we'll be out of there. Again, this has been kind of after hours talk over the last couple years, more so within the last several months.
So, when you mention bargaining chip, are you more like saying this would be something that we would utilize in a trade for some farm ground that we would purchase of some sort in the county, or what do you mean?
You know, the city to help fund it, probably.
Well, I mean, they're as much in need of it as we are, so why would I wanna give that up?
And I don't know how that would work.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
I got
that's
some
up
thoughts,
to.
so then we should have a discussion.
As
I- no,
the
I-
understanding is the city may have some interest in that property. And so
Yes.
our contribution to the shooting range would be to provide the city with something that they're interested in, so that they would fund
Part of the.
more of the cost. That would be one of our pay-ins to the cost of a,
Do we have
facility.
like a facility design, a size, a cost, anything on that?
So the city has started. The city has started that process. They put out a request for qualifications within the last several weeks. I went out with them probably a month ago. We looked at some piece of property out at the landfill. I think ultimately not suitable. They looked at some other power and water ground. They looked at some city ground down the island. I believe they're looking at possibly some ground at the airport.
That would be ideal out there.
Would they look at it
take down
outdoor or outdoor, indoor, outdoor?
More than likely an outdoor range with some sort of structure, classrooms, bathrooms, things of that nature.
So, I mean, realistically, I think we saw last time, it's kind of a not in my backyard phenomenon. And do we have any, and maybe it's too preliminary to tell, but do we have any indication that that's gonna be different this time around?
Not yet. I can't hear you.
Well, it's, the $10 million question would be a public range or private range.
Right.
But private for law enforcement only, you'd probably get less objections to that.
Sure.
And what we had hoped, when the conservation had proposed that.
That was a
range
couple of
that-
years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I didn't hear
Probably
leave
2
that
years
whole
ago.
effort.
oh, at least that, probably longer.
We were looking forward to
Couldn't even get the zoning.
having that addition and being able to use that. One of the issues with that property being in the floodplain, having the ability to add any permanent structure.
Right, that was a FEMA property that was we acquired. Yeah. No structures.
If there's interest in hearing more about that, we can certainly put together a PowerPoint or something of that nature and get you guys some.
Well, I think from my perspective, and I'm trying to cut you off, is I'd like to see what you're proposing and what your team's already having discussions. I mean, it does us, a lot more knowledge of what you're already having discussions with the city, of saying this is what the proposed range would need to be, this is the distances, you talked about bathrooms, facilities.
And
And
again,
then-
this has been, after work,
Yeah.
sitting around the fire.
Well,
type
and
discussion.
if they're all seeing the same thing, and kind of Jeff's point, we definitely know that we need those services, especially from the city standpoint too. I think that their system's no different than yours. I mean, isn't there, you guys have to be running for some of this stuff, and you guys have
Some
to
of
do
the-
different things. I mean, it's not like a regular range like you and I would go to and just shoot something as a plate, 100 yards away.
Right.
You guys are like moving, and that's all qualification stuff.
There's certainly more of a dynamic to our qualifications than going out and poking holes in paper.
Correct, and that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, it's not the same thing that I would look at when my mind wraps around it being a range. So that's why if you could have something that you propose, I don't know if it needs to be PowerPoint, maybe an email or something, share us some points, and then we can start having some of those discussions with the city and looking at that. I just wanted to have this just to say if we're not utilizing it, and I think long-term, if it's obviously flooded, nobody's gonna wanna buy it. If it's not the way it is now, I think we'd have an opportunity, and if Eric thinks that we need to utilize it for the jail for this summer and we put it up in the fall, I don't know, I'm open to those things. I just look at it from a perspective of we've had that property vacant, we need to either dispose of it versus just keeping it, but let's
So I
have
guess
that discussion.
I'm looking for some direction before I start the process of putting together the things we would need to start the disposal process.
I think we
I'm
should,
looking for direction about if I'm on hold on that for now.
I think I would, again, this is me, I want the rest, I would rather have that discussion when you come back, leave it just, for now vacant, because I don't think I wanna make a move on disposing of it. We can put it up something when we come back, by then you give us some information. Eric knows a little more of his contracts with the setup for the jail. If we were to put it up and we choose to sell it, I mean, we may be able to still say, hey, if we need it for the jail, we could still say we're selling it in September or whatever. Or if there's something in bargaining, we'll have that discussion, but I'd like to wait till after you come back. Give us some more time. I don't see a need for it right now. You guys are still getting stuff out.
I'll have more information at the next meeting.
Yeah, and if the city's already got something going on, is there any value with looking at the armory out there? I mean, they're out there. Is there any discussions that they've ever had? I know we've had good relationships with them in the past. I just don't know if there's any value there.
I don't have an answer for that.
Armory on the island?
Yeah, I mean, didn't we have already the discussion when we had a court here and there at one time?
Well, yeah, I don't think they have any shooting capability in nearby the airport,
Oh, okay.
highway.
I thought they had an indoor range when we
Yeah,
had it out here.
I
They were on
didn't see
Park
an indoor
Avenue, they had
range.
an indoor
There might
range.
be a range, but it's not much if it is one. They don't have anything.
Okay.
My tour did not show me a range.
Yeah, I'm not familiar either.
And we would be looking more outdoor. The regulations that govern indoor ranges are substantially more restrictive than
Yeah, I
outdoor.
definitely wanna, in my mind on Washington Street, I see that as a separate issue. I don't think we really need to hold up on getting rid of Washington Street. I think the range for law enforcement, for the county law enforcement, all the city PDs, our county, I don't like the fact that we can't have a good training facility. And I think we have some options. I have
You
some
guys are already
thoughts.
jointly working on other stuff, correct? I mean, you guys are on different task force and everything
And
like
I'm
that.
thinking about
sure-
West Liberty, Wilton, all the
Yeah.
communities that have.
Duplicating services for each and every department is nonsensical.
Yeah.
But there's sub-programs that we jointly fund together,
There is.
correct? And so
Yeah,
that's what I'm
and
saying.
those-
So
those
it's something in
programs
this
are-
effort, we could have that discussion with their city administrator. We could have a discussion with their city council as maybe even some of this joint discussion coming up in August.
Okay.
About funding, and that could be a discussion that you could bring up. The school board may not get value out of that, but there may be. I mean, we're still having police in some of those jails.
Sure.
So let's wait till we come back and then have that discussion with your construction crew if there's value in it. If not, we'll have it, I think, after the first week of you coming back, Nancy, on this.
August, I get to be gone till August?
No, when you come back
On
in
this.
June. Did I say August?
Yeah, well,
How you said on this?
okay.
On this, yeah, I did, yeah.
Hey,
try, Nancy.
a girl's gotta try.
Nice try.
Didn't say
So,
what year.
hey, so Quinn, let's plan on the 14th of June,
Okay,
okay?
I will have some.
Is there any interest in getting an appraisal done on that property?
I think there is. If it doesn't cost us that much, I think there's totally value in that.
It's just something that's a phone call away.
Yeah, just do like a market analysis, not something
Yeah, I don't
like
think
that.
you need a full.
Yeah, I think that's a good move.
Can you handle that, Eric? Okay.
Yeah, we use somebody local for the guardianship, conservatorship stuff, if you want her contact information.
I really think there's people that would be interested if they could I really do, but let's have that discussion, and maybe by then the city would be
Yeah.
reaching out to us when we got a for sale sign up front. Okay. Any other information from county employees? Okay. Hearing none, moving on to the next item, review comments from the public. If you're on, this is your opportunity to state your name and address and issues or concerns. Okay. Hearing none, anybody else have anything else for the good of the meeting? Again, we will not have a meeting next week on Monday. Hearing none, meeting adjourned.